I'll say it again. I have not come up with my top 10 list or top 50 lists. One thing I want to come up with is my top 10 most impactful spiritual bits of wisdom. Okay, there's so many of them that are so good, obviously, but some of them for me work better than others. I'd like to write a column at some point, maybe even a book on them. Some of them, like what you've heard me say so many times, the second line of the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, "Seek until you find, do not stop seeking until you find. When you find, you'll be disturbed. Then you will marvel, then you will reign over all, and finally you will rest." It's a 6-step process, basically, this journey. But a key part of that is this word called disturbing, okay? The whole idea of becoming more spiritual doesn't mean everything gets easy. Sometimes it gets harder. It's disturbing. Your world perception changes. You have to see self as different than what you saw yourself as for a long time. I could go on about that, but that's one of my top favorites. I also want to do my top favorite books. Just things that have impacted me the most, or concepts that have impacted me the most. And this is just so firmly in the top 3 somehow. If you've not read it, I highly recommend it. It's a Buddhist talking about, basically says the Tibetan Book of the Dead is too difficult. And it is. I mean, I'm going to be doing a video, you're going to video soon, on explaining the Tibetan Book of the Dead. But so he wrote this book to westernize the concept. And it talks all about how Americans, or the West in general, have a really strange relationship with death. How other parts of the world, specifically the East, has a different relationship with death. And basically he suggests that we sort of do an upgrade in our points of view. And he goes through a whole bunch of bits of wisdom that help us do that. And again, I'll be doing a video on that fairly soon. Now, so what I'm going to start with is a couple things that specifically impacted me, including this book, which again, I recommend you read. One is the concept of detachment from Buddha that I want to try to explain better. What detachment is. I've heard Christians complain that detachment is avoiding the world. It's actually the exact opposite for a bunch of different reasons. I want to explain detachment and go through one of my favorite little stories, which I haven't read in a very long time. The only time I've read it, the only time I try to tell the group is when I said it off the top of my head, and I don't think I said it well. So I came across it in this book again, and it's spectacular. Okay? Need some light. This is called The Nature of Mind, this chapter. And it's a story coming from a Buddhist teacher who tells this story. It's about a frog from the sea paying a visit to a frog in a pond. You remember the story?
Vaguely.
So a frog from the sea is coming to visit a frog in a pond. "Where do you come from?" asked the frog in the pond. "I come from the great ocean," he replied. "So how big is your ocean?" "It's gigantic." "You mean about a quarter of the size of my pond here?" "No, it's bigger." "Bigger? You mean half as big?" "No, it's even bigger." Is it as big as my pond?" "No, there's no comparison." "That's impossible. I've got to go see this for myself." So the frogs set off together. And when the frog from the pond saw the ocean, it was such a shock that his head just exploded into pieces. I think that's just hysterical. Okay, you can't explain it. You can't describe it, right? If you haven't detached or if you haven't let go, you wouldn't know you wouldn't know how incredible it is, right? The whole experience, so many people think that they've come to know God because, they go to church on Sundays or whatever, or they claim that Jesus is their Savior. But that is a huge far cry from actually experiencing the Christ inside. And to just think in terms of, oh, I'm saved because, is like the first great aspect of this. The complete connection to God is the head exploding. Everything is completely different, and I've got this eternal peace thing going on. And it's a process, okay? Your head can explode sometimes and not others. Right? It can explode a little and sometimes more. It's a whole process. But to know that that's the profound effect of where the Buddhas and the Jesuses and the Mohammeds and the Krishnas were going, that's the ultimate goal that you're shooting for here. Remember, Muhammad himself said, really pretty close to this kind of language, when he started receiving his revelations, it was as if his head was exploding. He was highly disturbed, receiving all these revelations, and he was almost physically incapable of taking it all on. It was that difficult. In the Christian concept, it's sort of like a crucifixion. So is it hard to do? Yeah. Is it absolutely worth it? Absolutely. So what we're going to talk about is starting with a sweet little poem, and then we're going to talk about why detachment is a must, why you have to do it, and why it's actually ultimately very effective and feels good. All right, here's a poem from William Blake. He who binds himself to a joy does the winged life destroy. He who kisses the joy as it flies lives in eternity's sunrise.
Repeat that again.
I knew that was coming. I'm going to draw it for you in a second. He who binds himself to joy, to a joy, does the winged life destroy. He who kisses the joy as it flies lives in eternity's sunrise. Good, I was hoping this would make you think. I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, that's like the most beautiful thing ever.
Who wrote that?
William Blake.
Oh,
So as soon as I read it, I'm like, oh, doing this in the group tomorrow. All right, anybody want to take a shot at it? What does it mean to bind yourself to a joy?
To bind yourself to some joyful reality in the flesh.
Okay, very good. And what word did you use? Obsessed. That's the extreme version of it. But binding is absolutely, how did you say it again?
Bind yourself to a joy in the flesh.
In the flesh. Which is to say, when you identify with a thing that's happening that gives you joy, when you really over-identify with it,
You think that's all there is.
by defining yourself as that.
and the clinging aspect to it, I think.
Right, well, that's exactly what I was going to attempt to draw. But yes, I need this in order to feel joy, right? If this happens, I will feel joy. If this doesn't happen, I won't feel joy. Now, give a few specific examples. Not necessarily your life, just in general. What do people in American society do?
They take selfies.
Yes.
Yeah.
And aren't they obsessed with the perfect selfie,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Well, it's not the experience. It's I want to cling to the idea of the experience and recreate it.
Look
and
at
have
this
it,
selfie.
To be able to look at it again and have it happen again.
Mm-hmm. As the author of this book describes again and again, the labels, which I call costumes, it's the labels that we're obsessed with. How I look and the money and the championships and all the flesh aspect of things. And as William Blake says, I'll read it for you too. He who binds himself to a joy does the winged life destroy. He who kisses the joy as it flies lives in eternity's sunrise. So let's say something good happens to you. Are you allowed to feel joy if something good happens to you? Sure.
Of course.
You know, Penguins winning the Stanley Cup. That was great, at least for me.
Or just taking another breath.
Also the case. That's good. I'll choose the Penguins, but okay. Now that works as well. The fact that, in fact, they say that in this book, that the Buddhists who work on this stuff, they don't know if they're going to be alive the next day when they go to bed. So they make sure they take care of all their affairs and they turn their cups over and a bunch of stuff like, I might be dead in the morning. I can't assume anything. And they practice this again and again. They're like, every time they take in another breath, they feel joy. They're like, I got another one. Yeah. Imagine if you did that every time you took in a breath. Another reason to feel joy. Another one. Do you want me to keep doing that? Now, instead of clinging to the aspect of it and saying, this is what I need to feel joy, which is what you were saying, that's the winged life will destroy that. Why is that? What is the winged life? I think, that's a bird. And what are birds doing? You said ascend. I'm okay with that. They're flying somehow. But they're moving, right? They're not stationary. It's winged. It's going to fly around. It's going to go places. It's transient, if you will.
It's always in motion.
What's going to happen? Right. What will happen to that what you just defined by the best selfie? When you take a best selfie, what happens the next day?
It's
Gone. Ah, man, I wish I looked like that.
Yep.
Now you're like, now you just held yourself to a standard you can never. We should never take pictures of each other, because one day we're going to say, I wish I looked like that again. You're doomed, okay? What about the breath? Are you always going to have that breath? That type of breath you're referring to? No, that'll be taken from you as well. And if you cling to only that, the winged life, the spirit life ultimately, the flesh aspect is the part that's moving, it's gonna kill that joy, whatever it is. The penguins aren't gonna keep winning the cup. Relationships, finances, physical health, all that kind of stuff. Once again, if you've got it and you've got it going well, that's joy, that's fine. But you can't define yourself by it. What do you have to do? Don't bind yourself to it. Kiss the joy as it flies. Okay? That's so exquisite. Kiss the joy as it flies. So if I could somehow think of kissing this bird if it flies by, kissing the experience of having a Stanley Cup winner or whatever, just kissing the joy of being able to take a breath and all these experiences. So Kabbalah teaches it like this. They call it equivalence of form. There's nothing in the physical world that can be exactly like anything else. You can't make a hammer and a chicken. You can put them close to each other, but they're not going to ever occupy the exact same space. Can't be done. But in the spirit or non-physical world, you can have things approximate. If I could play a guitar like David could play it, we could probably both play C sharp. Is that even a note? If we're both strumming it or whatever at the exact same time, that's called resonance. And what happens when you've got resonant music? What happens when you have resonant emotion? Resonant spirit, which is always resonant.
You have harmony.
It's harmony. That's called equivalence of form. Kabbalists teach you aren't here to physically connect to everything else. You're here to spiritually connect. And that's why you are the winged, what was that again? Winged life, right? You have to become one with it. That's why the kiss, it doesn't really mean putting your lips on the thing. It's to see it for what it is. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, be a passerby. Oh, I love that, right? Just look at the joy as it goes past you. Look at the experience as it goes past you. It's in that place, that's called detachment, where the spirit really fills you. Wayne Dyer calls it in the gap. The whole idea is when you separate, what word did you use? Clinging. Right? This was the concept when I mentioned to you guys before, when my kids were toddlers. I was so clinging to them. I got a lot of attention from people because my kids were cute, running around. Oh, look how cute they are. And then somewhere deep inside, I realized this was not always going to happen. This is going to get more difficult, and they're not going to be, well, they're still cute. You're recording this. Edit this part. It's not as cute anymore when they're 8, 9, 10, 14, 22, 36, right? Man, toddlers are cute. Literally, that was what was in my psyche. I wasn't actively thinking that, but it was controlling me. And then I thankfully came across some of Buddhist teachings, and I realized I was going through a lot of pain because I was clinging to their youth. How silly is that? What a stupid thing to attempt to do. Try to keep my kids 2 years old.
Well, that's the reason I say that is my young ones now, it's like every milestone, especially the third, because I know that's the last one. And so every time she does anything, she rolled over, she stood up, oh no, now she's growing up, now she's out of her 6-month clothes, every single milestone.
Right.
And it's like you could spend your whole life I could see how if I got totally caught up in clinging to each one of those moments, how painful it is, because there's the clinging and then the letting go and then the clinging again,
right.
And letting go, and it's exhausting.
And just let go the whole time, like the sunset.
Right.
Every day it sets. It just keeps setting. It keeps setting. And the one time you're watching a beautiful sunset, do you have to go, it's the last one? Because it's the joy that we have in common. Who gives a crap about the physical reason why you feel the joy? It's irrelevant. Whatever you can find the joy in. Virgie did it great. Hers was the breath. Mine's the penguins. Just shows she's more involved than me. But whatever.
It's all relative,
there's
right?
specific. Right. It's the joy that's resonant. You can find joy in bad circumstances. I found a lot of joy in Tom Brady winning the Super Bowl this year because I was no longer resenting the guy. I was actually like, this is awesome. I'm watching the worst thing happen to me ever in terms of my football life. Actually felt really beautiful. It's the same sort of joy. It's resonant, that's why.